everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynne. I'm Dr. Brooke.
I'm Dr. Lynne.
And we're so glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Oh, we're talking about a hot topic.
Yes.
No pun intended. Well, pun intended.
Pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Hot flashes. So it's something that we're some of us are getting used to.
Yeah.
Some of us are trying to get through. And
yeah,
there's some key pieces to this though, because there's some real things that can be done about it.
Yeah, and not only hot flashes, but night sweats too. I mean, they go together. Hot flashes obviously are more like a warm or hot period during the day that comes and goes, and night sweats
are happening at night.
Yeah, and those can be really, for me, those were worse. I've kind of put them at bay, which is what we want to talk about today. But
so what hormone in particular is at fault when it comes to hormones, comes to night sweats?
Well, I mean, there's
hot flashes.
It depends on what you read and what information out there. The bottom line is when we get into perimenopause and then menopause at this phase of life, our hormones are starting to fluctuate. And typically what happens with a night sweat or a hot flash is something. Typically it's estrogen. You get a spike in it or a quick drop, and it's a big, like, quick one way or the other, and that's what'll bring on that physiological response. And so here what we're really talking about beyond the hot flash and night sweat is how can we keep our hormones more balanced?
How can we support the body so the hormones don't have those sudden drops?
Yeah, or peaks. A lot of times it's something that goes up. But what happens is typically when you're cycling is we have estrogen and progesterone, and they're in a dance with each other. They're going up and down through various parts of our cycle, but they're always in the same relationship with each other. We hit perimenopause, sometimes there's more progesterone than there should be or less, or estrogen, and they're not balancing each other out. And sometimes you have enough estrogen, but not enough progesterone to balance it. So you have to really look at both of them. And then one of the symptoms of the hormones getting imbalanced as we shift into perimenopause is something like a night sweat or a hot flash.
And you're really the expert on this, but I want everyone to understand it because I thought it was so helpful to learn this. So basically the issue is because the ovaries are shutting down from producing estrogen, and now something called our adrenal glands, or also known as our stress glands, they're having to come in and fill in the role of the ovaries, correct?
Right, because we need estrogen throughout our life, but when we hit perimenopause, the problem is the ovaries are cooling off because we're not going to have babies anymore.
Right.
But we still need the estrogen, so now it's like, how are we going to get it? And that's where the body picks
And that's
up.
where really lifestyle and stress and mindset and physical health and vitality all play into that, because our adrenal glands or our stress glands, if they're overworked already, if you're coming into
100%.
menopause just, exhausted and been putting your body through a lot of dieting or fatigue or what have you, there could be some issues when the adrenal glands take over in terms of balance.
That's typically when crap hits the fan, is if you're overstressed and your adrenal glands are already taxed and not working the way they should be. They can't pick up the slack for the ovaries.
Right.
Now that's a recipe for just a mess. And that's kind of where I was, because I had a lot of stressful things happen. I was anxious, and I was not only having the hot flashes and night sweats, but I would wake up, and some of you will, second this, but I would wake up not only in a full-on sweat, then I'd be freezing because I was wet, but like so sweaty that I'd have to change my pillow, sometimes my sheets and my clothes. And not only that, my heart was beating out of my chest. Like I just couldn't. It would be like startled, sweaty, and it was awful because it messes with your sleep. You guys know this now.
I was going to say, that's sort of like a treadmill then you get on, because then you're not sleeping good because you're up in the middle of the night. If you've got to get out of bed and change sheets, then you're awake and it's hard to get back to sleep.
And then your stress is higher because you're not sleeping. And when your stress is higher, your hormones are worse. So,
So
anyway.
What were some of the keys for you getting this under control and balancing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different herbal supplements that can help that I don't actually do, but they can give, if you're in a really tight spot and you just need relief, like we talk about that in our webinar. But just from a standpoint of like, what can you do lifestyle-wise? For me, it was stress management. It was breath work. It was doing what I could to get my adrenal glands healthier. Another key piece here is that your adrenal glands also function with your blood sugar. So if your blood sugar is dropping or it's all over your place, your adrenal glands are working with it to try to balance that out. And if it's spiking cortisol or your stress hormone, now it's throwing off estrogen and progesterone too, and that can set you up for a whole mess. So the minute that I started to focus on that as well, I wouldn't say the minute, that's an overstatement, but once I figured that out, things changed for me. And one of the biggest things that I can give you guys that was very helpful is I eat pretty low carb through the day, but I eat my carbs at night. Not at night, like right before bed, but with my dinner meal. And it's not like carbs like bread and pasta, but like maybe it's some white rice or sweet potato or fruit or whatever that's going to look like, a healthy type of whole food carb. And that for me tends to balance my blood sugar when I go to sleep. And I think for me what was happening at night was that I was waking up, my blood sugar was dropping, I was sweaty, the cortisol was kicked in. So that was a huge help for me. And this is, again, we have this conversation all the time of let's dive deep and get to the cause, not just the surface thing, because who would ever guess that your blood sugar swinging and you being stressed out leading to adrenal problems would be the cause of your night sweats.
I was just going to say this is another beautiful example of how everything is interconnected and you can't look at everything in a vacuum. You have to see the interrelationship. And it makes it complex, but there are ways to break it down and separate it. And it starts with just understanding. Right. Understanding it a little bit. Because when you know better, you do better.
That's 100% right. And to that point, I say this all the time when it comes to your hormones, you have to test. Because if you're not testing, you're guessing. And your body is literally obsessed with hormone balance, and all of your glands work together. So your thyroid gland, your adrenal gland, your ovaries, they're all working together. And so if you're throwing one off in some way, if you're taking what you think is, a docile cream, or you're doing like a bioidentical or even an herbal supplement that's going to change your hormones, now that's different for your body and it can shift everything.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, in some cases those are really beneficial, but in all cases you should be aware that you're introducing something from outside into the body, and that there are a lot of ways, before jumping to that, there are a lot of ways that you can help support your body to balance it on its own.
That's right. And the bigger picture there is, you may think, well, it's just an herbal supplement, but if that herbal supplement is working to say, there are herbal supplements that can help increase your estrogen, it can also decrease. If you're taking a supplement that, let's say, decreases your estrogen and your estrogen's already low and you don't know it, it's a recipe for making things worse. So you need to have a good baseline.
Yep. So testing is important.
Testing is huge. I definitely look at what you're eating, and your blood sugar is huge too, and stress management. I mean, there are so many other things we can talk to, and we go into that in our webinar and other things that we do, but those would probably be the first three.
Yeah, that's great. For somebody who doesn't have, say you don't have hormone night sweats or hot flashes.
Yeah.
Should you still be concerned about your hormones? Is there something?
I think if you're having, my opinion is, if you're having any type of symptoms, right? Because symptoms is your body's warning sign that there's something going on, then you need to look into it. And when it comes to hormone, that's a wide range. So that could look like night sweats or hot flashes for me. For you, it could be anxiety, or it could be
bloating,
dizziness, it could be bloating, it could be heart palpitations, it could be a little bit of depression.
Yeah.
It could be heavy bleeding, clotting. I mean, there are so many different ways that hormone imbalance presents itself for different women. So I would say if you're dealing with any of those types of things, it's worth it to look at your hormones.
And I think back to your point is, sometimes the solution is to go to your medical doctor and get, a D&C if you're having heavy bleeding, or different other interventions that will stop that symptom in its tracks. The point is take a listen to what Dr. Brooke said, is the underlying cause is going to resurface. It's just going to keep coming back in other ways.
And it can, yes.
Yeah. And so as much as it is a drag and it's nice to have that symptom stopped, you've got to look back to the things that are going to influence your, and it's our foundations. True. It's all of the things we talk about, right? And so it impacts so much. It's your emotional health and your mindset because of stress, and balancing that and helping support your adrenals. It's physical health and vitality in so many ways.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole there's a whole big picture there. And by the way, some people legitimately need a DNC, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to your point, you just want to make sure you're also treating the underlying cause there at the
Correct.
same time. And by the way, the underlying cause, sometimes you have to dig into it, and every woman's different. And I'll give you another quick example of that, because we're running long here in the video. But when I started first working with my functional medicine doctor, we tested my hormones, and this is a whole nother conversation my hormones were very low. But what he said was, everything that I've seen, your gut is so off, your digestion is so off, and if we fix that, your hormones will come into place. And if they don't come into place, then we can adjust the hormones. Yeah. But had I just gone right for the hormones, I would have never addressed the gut issues. And I'm here to tell you that right when I saw that doctor, it had probably been 6 to 7 months that I had, this is Brooke again, TMI, a period. And dang it if I'm not having like almost a regular period all the time now.
We don't want to scare you off. It is the right thing to do.
Right, because the longer you cycle, really, some of us maybe look forward to not having to deal with that, but the longer you cycle, the longer your hormones are functioning, the better for your health.
Yes,
that's another conversation.
Think about how it impacts your bones,
your heart,
your skin,
everything. So it's better to cycle, the longer you do, the better. Every woman's different, but I mean, there was no hormone replacement, there was no bioidentical, there was no herbal supplements. It was simply working on my gut and changing what I was eating.
Great. So I know you have so much that you've learned.
I'm going over there. But my point to that is you need to sometimes do a deep dive. You need to get somebody that you can trust to work with, and definitely want to test.
Yeah. So what would be a baby step for somebody who is dealing with this and feels overwhelmed? They've listened to this, and they're starting to understand a little bit more about the hormones, but they don't have a degree or doctorate or whatever. What's a baby step to help with improving these symptoms?
Yeah, I think so. If we're talking, let's just keep it simple and assume, and this is more of it on a symptomatic level, but let's assume that ovaries cooling off, so there's less estrogen than there should be. So a simple thing that you could do is add some maca powder into a smoothie.
That's great.
Maca is a natural herb that in studies is shown to help elevate estrogen, or at least balance it out. So, and it can be very beneficial with night sweats and hot flashes. Yeah. That's a great place to start. You could also add in some foods with phytoestrogens like flaxseed or chickpeas. Those are both really good examples.
So those are plant-based. They mimic estrogens in our body.
Yeah.
So, great.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're following us on social media if you're not already. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Website is www.lifeafterkids.com. Thank you so much for joining us.